I lived with a woman who was never satisfied until I stopped fixing her complaints and chose myself over a marriage built on endless criticism at last. Do you know what it is like to live with someone who is never satisfied? Let me paint you a picture. This morning I made coffee, too strong. Yesterday I cleaned the kitchen, but I missed a spot on the counter. Last week I surprised her with dinner reservations, but it was the wrong restaurant. And in the bedroom, well, let us just say nothing I do there ever measures up either. My wife has turned complaining into an art form. She has got a PhD in finding fault with everything I do, say, or even think. I wake up every morning wondering what today's criticism will be. Will it be the way I load the dishwasher, the route I take to work, or maybe she will circle back to her favorite topic about how I do not satisfy her needs? The thing is, I used to care. I used to actually listen and try to fix whatever was bothering her. When she said the house was not clean enough, I would spend weekends scrubbing every surface. When she complained about our social life, I would plan activities and invite friends over. When she criticized my performance in bed, I would research and try new things. But here is the kicker, it never made a difference. 3 years ago, she started with small complaints. The toilet seat was up. I forgot to buy her favorite yogurt. Normal couple stuff, right? But gradually, the complaints multiplied and intensified. Soon, everything about me was wrong. The way I chewed my food was annoying. My laugh was too loud. I did not understand her emotional needs. I was not ambitious enough. I was not romantic enough. I was not man enough. Last month, she stood in our kitchen and delivered what felt like a performance review of our marriage. She had actual notes written down about everything I was doing wrong as a husband. The intimacy section was particularly brutal. According to her detailed analysis, I was failing in every possible way a man could fail his wife. I remember sitting there watching her read from her little notebook and thinking, when did I become the enemy in my own home? When did loving someone become a daily exercise in being told you are not good enough? But the breaking point came 2 weeks ago. We were at dinner with her sister and brother-in-law. The conversation turned to home renovations, and I mentioned wanting to update our bathroom. Before I could finish explaining my ideas, she jumped in with her commentary about how I never follow through on projects and how she always has to handle everything herself. Then she laughed and said, "He is never satisfied with anything he starts, but somehow expects me to be satisfied with everything he does not finish." Her sister laughed. Her brother-in-law smirked. And I sat there realizing I had just been publicly humiliated by the woman who promised to honor me at an altar 5 years ago. That night, lying in bed next to someone who found something wrong with literally everything about me, I had a moment of clarity. I was not the problem. I was convenient target practice for someone who would never be satisfied with anything or anyone. The next morning, she complained about how I made the bed. Too many wrinkles in the comforter. As I watched her remake it for the 3rd time, I thought about all the men who come home to wives who appreciate them, who thank them for small gestures, who do not keep scorecards of their failures. I started paying attention differently. Every complaint, every criticism, every eye roll became data, and the data was clear. I was living with someone who had made dissatisfaction her default setting. She wants to talk about being never satisfied. Fine. But I was about to give her something substantial to complain about, something that would make all her previous grievances look like minor inconveniences. Because here is what she did not understand. A man can only take so much before he stops trying to fix what is broken and starts planning his exit strategy instead. The week after that dinner disaster, she decided to escalate things. It was as if she sensed I was pulling away and figured the solution was to double down on the criticism. Monday morning, she complained about the way I organized the garage over the weekend. Tuesday, she found fault with how I parallel parked in front of the grocery store. Wednesday, she announced to our neighbor that I could not even hang a picture frame straight. But Thursday was when things got really interesting. We were supposed to meet her college friends for drinks. I showed up straight from work, and before I could even order, she launched into her latest routine. "Oh, you guys know how men are," she said, gesturing toward me like I was some kind of museum exhibit. "They think they are God's gift, but half the time they cannot even find what they are looking for." Her friends laughed. They always laughed because apparently, husband bashing is peak entertainment for some women. But then she kept going. "I mean, I have to give him step-by-step instructions for everything. And I do mean everything." She raised her eyebrows and gave them that look women give when they are talking about bedroom activities. I sat there nursing my beer, watching my wife turn our private life into public entertainment. Her friend asked if I was okay, and I just smiled. "I am learning a lot about expectations tonight," I said, very educational. My wife shot me a look, but I was not done. "Do you know what is funny? I have been thinking about satisfaction lately, what it means, what it takes, what happens when someone decides they do not want to be satisfied. I took a sip of my beer. Fascinating topic, really. The conversation got awkward fast. Her friends started checking their phones. My wife tried to change the subject, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. She knew something had shifted, but she could not figure out what. Friday night, she tried a different approach, seduction mixed with criticism. She complained about how I never initiated intimacy anymore. Then she tried to start something herself. But here is the thing about being constantly told you are inadequate. Eventually you start believing it is not worth the effort. What is wrong with you? She asked when I did not respond to her advances. Are you having performance issues now too? I looked at her, really looked at her and said, no performance issues. Just wondering why I would want to perform for someone who is never satisfied with the show. She stared at me like I had spoken in a foreign language. What is that supposed to mean? It means I am tired of being your personal disappointment. Every day, every conversation, every interaction, I am somehow falling short of your expectations. So, I am curious. What would it take for you to actually be satisfied? She got defensive immediately. I am not that bad. I just have standards. Standards? I repeated. Right. Well, maybe it is time I develop some standards of my own. That weekend, she ramped up the complaints even more, like she was testing how far she could push before I would break down and beg for her approval. She criticized my choice of breakfast cereal. She complained about how I loaded the washing machine. She even found fault with the way I answered the phone. Sunday afternoon, while I was fixing a leaky faucet, she stood behind me providing commentary about how I was doing it wrong. You are using the wrong wrench. You are turning it the wrong way. You are going to make it worse. I stopped working and turned around. You know what? You are right. I am going to make it worse. Much worse. She looked confused. What are you talking about? She asked. I am talking about the fact that you are never satisfied with anything I do, so maybe it is time I gave you something real to be unsatisfied about. You are being dramatic, she said, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. I went back to the faucet, but my mind was already working on a different kind of fix, the kind that would solve the real problem in this house. Because I had figured out something important. She did not want me to improve. She wanted me to be her permanent project, her reliable source of things to complain about. Well, I was about to give her the ultimate complaint, something so significant that all her previous grievances would look like love letters. I decided to run an experiment, call it my final test before making any permanent decisions. For 2 weeks, I was going to be the perfect husband she claimed she wanted. I would address every single complaint she had made over the past year and see what happened. Week 1 started with the house. She always complained it was not clean enough, so I deep cleaned everything. Baseboards, ceiling fans, inside the refrigerator, behind the toilet. I organized every closet, labeled every storage container, and made sure every surface could pass a white glove inspection. Her response, "Why are you suddenly so obsessed with cleaning? It is weird." Next, I tackled her complaints about romance. She always said I was not thoughtful enough, so I bought flowers twice that week. I left little notes in her lunch bag. I surprised her with her favorite coffee on Wednesday morning. Her response, "You are acting strange. What did you do wrong?" Then came the bedroom situation. She had made it clear that my performance was not meeting her standards, so I really researched. New techniques, better communication, longer foreplay. I focused entirely on her satisfaction. Her response, "Why are you trying so hard? It feels forced." By the end of week 1, I realized something crucial. She was not actually interested in improvement. She was interested in having problems to solve. I was her personal fixer-upper project, and if I actually got fixed, she would lose her hobby. Week 2, I addressed her complaints about my social skills. She always said I was too quiet at parties, so I became more engaging. I told stories, asked questions, and participated in conversations. At her book club meeting, I actually contributed to the discussion about the novel they were reading. Her response, "You are being too much. People are going to think you are showing off." I fixed her complaint about me not helping with meal planning by researching recipes and suggesting a weekly menu. She said I was trying to control what she ate. I addressed her criticism about my fashion sense by upgrading my wardrobe. She said I was having a midlife crisis. The breakthrough moment came on a Friday night. She was complaining about how I never listened to her, so I sat down and gave her my complete attention. No phone, no television, just me listening to everything she had to say. For 30 minutes she listed every single thing that was wrong with me, our marriage, and our life together. I listened without interrupting, took mental notes, and when she finished I asked, "What would make you happy?" She stared at me for a long moment, then said, "I do not know. I just know this is not it." That is when it hit me. She did not know what would make her happy because complaining had become her comfort zone. Being dissatisfied was her identity, and I had been enabling it by constantly trying to fix whatever she decided was broken. The next morning, she complained about the breakfast I made. Too much salt in the scrambled eggs. I had used the exact same recipe I had been perfecting for 2 weeks, the one she had complimented just days earlier. I sat across from her, watching her pick apart something she had previously praised, and realized my experiment had given me the exact data I needed. This was not about me being inadequate. This was about her needing me to be inadequate. "Do you know what is interesting?" I said, setting down my fork. "I have been addressing every complaint you have made for the past 2 weeks. The cleaning, the romance, the intimacy, the social situations, the meal planning, even my wardrobe. And somehow you found new things to be unsatisfied with." She looked up from her eggs. "I am just trying to help you be better." "No," I said calmly. "You are trying to keep me in a position where I am always failing your tests. But here is the thing about tests. Eventually the student realizes the teacher does not actually want them to pass." She started to argue, but I held up my hand. "I am not done. You see, I figured out what would actually make you satisfied, and it is not anything I can give you. It is something you have to lose." The confusion on her face was almost amusing. She had no idea what storm was coming, but she was about to find out what it felt like when someone stopped playing the game she designed to always win. The confrontation came on a Tuesday evening. She had spent the entire day building up to what I now recognize as one of her signature complaint sessions. She had been storing up grievances like ammunition, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash them all at once. It started with dinner. I had made grilled chicken with vegetables, something she had specifically requested earlier in the week. But apparently the chicken was too dry, the vegetables were overcooked, and I had used the wrong seasoning. Then she moved on to how I had loaded the dishwasher that morning. Wrong plates in the wrong slots. From there she launched into her greatest hits collection, how I never planned romantic dates anymore, how I was not ambitious enough in my career, how I did not understand her emotional needs, how our intimacy had become routine and predictable. "You know what your problem is," she said, pointing her fork at me like she was delivering a verdict. "You are comfortable being mediocre. You do not push yourself to be better. You just coast through everything, including this marriage." I set down my knife and fork, looked directly at her and said, "You are absolutely right." She paused, clearly not expecting agreement. "What?" "You are right. I am comfortable being mediocre. At least that is what I have been doing for the past 3 years, but you know what? I am done being comfortable with that." She narrowed her eyes. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means I am going to give you something substantial to complain about. Something that will make all these little grievances look like love notes." "You are being dramatic again." I stood up from the table and walked to the kitchen counter where I had placed some papers earlier that day. "No, I am being practical. You see, I have been thinking about what would actually satisfy you. And I realized it is not me becoming a better husband. It is you having the freedom to find someone who meets all your impossible standards." I turned around and placed the divorce papers on the table in front of her. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, anger, panic, and back to confusion. "What is this?" "This is me giving you exactly what you have been asking for. You are never satisfied with me as a husband, so now you will not have to be. You are free to find someone who can meet all your expectations." She stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. "You cannot be serious." "I am absolutely serious. You spend every day telling me how inadequate I am, how I do not satisfy your needs, how I am not the man you deserve. Well, congratulations. You are about to get the chance to find that man. This is insane. You cannot just end a marriage because of some arguments." "Arguments?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "These are not arguments. This is you systematically breaking down everything about me until I started believing I was actually the problem. But here is what I figured out. The problem is not that I am not good enough. The problem is that you do not want me to be good enough." She stood up, knocking over her water glass. "That is not true, really, because I spent 2 weeks being the perfect husband you claimed you wanted. I addressed every single complaint you have made over the past year, and somehow you found new things to be dissatisfied with. You do not want solutions. You want problems. You are twisting everything around. No, I am finally seeing everything clearly. You turned complaining about me into your full-time job. Well, consider this your pink slip." She was shaking now, and I could see the panic setting in. You cannot do this. We can work through this. I will change. Change into what? Someone who appreciates what they have. Someone who builds up instead of tearing down. You have had 5 years to be that person. Everyone has bad days. Everyone complains sometimes. This is not about bad days. This is about you making me the villain in my own life. I wake up every morning wondering what I will do wrong today. I go to bed every night being told what I did wrong. That is not a marriage. That is a prison sentence. She reached for the papers, but I pulled them back. These are already filed. I met with a lawyer yesterday. This is not a negotiation or a threat. This is me informing you that I am done being your personal disappointment. But I love you. No, you love having someone to fix, someone to improve, someone to complain about, but you do not love me. You cannot love someone you have no respect for. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, she whispered, "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing." There is nothing left to say. You wanted someone who would never be satisfied with being your punching bag. Congratulations. You found him. The next 48 hours were like watching someone go through the 5 stages of grief and fast forward. First came denial. She acted like the divorce papers were some kind of elaborate joke. She made coffee for both of us Wednesday morning, chatted about weekend plans, and completely ignored the elephant in the room. When I reminded her that I was serious, she moved straight into anger. You are throwing away 5 years over some petty complaints. You are being childish and vindictive. Petty complaints, I repeated. You literally kept a notebook of everything I was doing wrong as a husband. That is not petty. That is systematic. I was trying to help our marriage. You were trying to manage me like a project that needed constant fixing. There is a difference. Thursday morning brought the bargaining phase. She woke up early and made breakfast, trying to demonstrate how she could be different. Look, I made your favorite pancakes. See, I can be appreciative. I can focus on the positive. I sat at the table watching her perform domestic happiness like it was an audition. This is not about pancakes. This is not about you being nice for a few days to prove a point. Then what is it about? It is about respect. It is about partnership. It is about waking up next to someone who does not immediately start calculating what is wrong with your existence. She tried a different approach. What if we went to counseling? What if we worked with someone to fix our communication? Our communication is fine. You communicate exactly what you think about me every single day. Crystal clear. I will stop complaining. I will be more supportive. For how long? A week? A month? Until the novelty wears off and you go back to your default setting. By Thursday afternoon, reality was starting to sink in. She called her sister, her mother, and her best friend. I could hear her side of the conversations from the next room. She was painting herself as the victim of a sudden, inexplicable decision. According to her version, I had just randomly decided to divorce her out of nowhere. What she was not telling them was about the notebook, or the public humiliations, or the constant criticism. She was editing the story to make herself look like the innocent party, blindsided by an unreasonable husband. Friday brought depression. She barely got out of bed, did not eat, and spent most of the day crying. When she did speak, it was to ask questions like, "How could you just stop loving me? And do not you remember how good we used to be together?" We were never good together, I told her. We were just good at pretending we were good together. You were good at finding things to fix, and I was good at letting you try to fix them. That is not true. We had happy times. We had quiet times. Times when you temporarily ran out of complaints, but the complaints always came back. Saturday morning, she tried one final strategy. She sat me down and delivered what sounded like a prepared speech about how marriage requires work and compromise, how every relationship has problems, and how giving up was the easy way out. "You think this is easy?" I asked her. "You think divorcing someone after 5 years is taking the easy path, is it not? Instead of working on our problems, you are just walking away." I did work on our problems for 3 years. I addressed every complaint, met every demand, and changed everything you asked me to change. And you know what happened? You found new problems because you do not want solutions. You want control. I never tried to control you. Every complaint was an attempt to reshape me into someone else, someone who met your ever-changing standards. But here is the thing about standards. If they keep changing, they are not actually standards, they are weapons. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the exact moment when she realized this was really happening, that no amount of bargaining or promising or crying was going to change my mind. So, that is it. 5 years and you are just done. I was done 2 weeks ago. The divorce papers were just making it official. What am I supposed to do now? Whatever you want. Find someone who enjoys being your improvement project. Find someone who thinks constant criticism is a sign of caring. Find someone who does not mind being told they are inadequate every single day. And what about you? I am going to find someone who does not need me to be perfect to appreciate what I bring to the table. Someone who builds me up instead of tearing me down. Someone who understands that satisfaction comes from gratitude, not from endless complaints. She nodded slowly, finally understanding that this conversation was over. Not just this conversation, but all of them. 6 months later, I am sitting in my own place, drinking coffee that is exactly the right strength. In complete silence, no complaints about the temperature, no criticism about the brand I chose, no suggestions about how I could make it better, just peaceful, satisfying silence. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago. She fought it initially, hired a lawyer who tried to drag things out, hoping I would change my mind. But my resolve never wavered. Every time I considered backing down, I remembered the notebook, the public humiliations, the years of walking on eggshells in my own home. The settlement was straightforward. We split everything down the middle, sold the house, and went our separate ways. No drama, no bitter custody battles over pets, no prolonged financial entanglements. Clean break. She tried reaching out a few times after the papers were signed. Text messages asking how I was doing, emails with links to articles about couples who had successfully worked through their problems. Even a handwritten letter that arrived last week, talking about how she had been reflecting on our marriage and realized she could have been more appreciative. I did not respond to any of them. Not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to discuss. She had finally gotten something substantial to complain about. And ironically, it was the one thing I was not willing to fix. My friends have been interesting to watch through all this. The married ones initially tried to talk me out of it. Every marriage has rough patches, they said. You just need to communicate better. But the single ones, they looked at me like I had been freed from prison. My brother was the most direct about it. I have been watching you shrink for 3 years, he told me over beers last month. You went from being this confident guy to someone who apologized for breathing too loud. Good for you for getting yourself back. And that is exactly what it feels like, getting myself back. I make decisions now without wondering how they will be criticized. I eat what I want, watch what I want, sleep when I want. I am not constantly bracing for the next round of complaints. Last weekend I went on my first date since the divorce. Nothing serious, just coffee with a woman I met through work. She thanked me for opening her car door, complimented the restaurant I had chosen, and laughed at my jokes. When I walked her to her car, she said she had had a wonderful time and would love to see me again. I spent the entire drive home marveling at how simple it could be. A conversation without criticism, an evening without complaints, someone who actually seemed to enjoy my company instead of enduring it. I'm not saying every woman is like my ex-wife, most are not. But I learned something valuable about myself through this experience. I will never again tolerate being someone's perpetual disappointment. Life is too short to spend it with someone who sees your flaws as their personal mission to correct. The irony is not lost on me. She said I never satisfied her and she was right, but not because I was not good enough, because she had made dissatisfaction her default state. She was addicted to being unsatisfied, and I was enabling her habit by constantly trying to be better. Now she has something real to be unsatisfied about. She lost a husband who would have moved mountains to make her happy if she had ever been capable of being happy. Instead, she chose to focus on molehills and turn them into mountains of complaints. Do I miss being married? Sometimes I miss the idea of partnership, the comfort of companionship, the security of knowing someone has your back, but I do not miss her version of marriage, where love was conditional on meeting impossible standards. These days I wake up every morning wondering what good thing might happen today. Not what criticism I will face, not what disappointment I will cause, not what standard I will fail to meet, just what good thing might happen. And you know what? That feels like the most satisfying way to live. Turns out, when you stop trying to satisfy someone who is determined to be unsatisfied, you finally get to discover what actually satisfies you. She wanted something to really complain about. Mission accomplished. But somehow I do not think she is enjoying this particular complaint as much as she enjoyed all the others. Our story has come to an end. If you have made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I have selected 2 other videos for you that I am sure you will enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I will be waiting for you in the next story. A year has passed since the divorce was finalized, and I'm sitting in my new apartment on a quiet Sunday morning, sunlight streaming through windows that I chose, myself, drinking coffee brewed exactly how I like it. No comments, no adjustments, no silent judgment. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I feel genuinely light. Not the temporary relief after an argument, but a deep, steady lightness that comes from knowing I'm no longer carrying the weight of someone else's perpetual dissatisfaction. Looking back, I realize how much of my identity I'd surrendered without even noticing. I'd become a professional apologizer, a master fixer of problems that were never meant to be solved. Every complaint chipped away at my confidence until I started believing her narrative, that I was inherently inadequate, that love required constant improvement, that my best would never be enough. I lived in a state of quiet dread, always scanning for the next flaw she'd point out, always bracing for the next wave of criticism. It wasn't dramatic abuse, no yelling, no violence, just a slow, relentless erosion of my self-worth disguised as high standards and wanting the best for us. The hardest part to admit is how long I stayed. I told myself I was being patient, committed, masculine even, taking the hits to keep the marriage alive. But really, I was afraid. Afraid of being alone, afraid of admitting failure. Afraid that maybe she was right and no one else would want someone so flawed. Leaving felt like jumping off a cliff. Staying felt like slow suffocation. In the end, choosing myself wasn't brave, it was survival. What surprises me most now is how quickly peace arrived once she was gone. The silence in this apartment isn't empty, it's full of possibility. I cook meals without wondering if they'll be critiqued. I watch movies I actually enjoy. I leave dishes in the sink overnight without guilt. Simple things, but they feel revolutionary. I've rediscovered hobbies I'd abandoned because they weren't productive enough in her eyes. I laugh louder, speak more directly, take up space without apology. Dating again has been revealing. Women exist who notice what's right instead of cataloging what's wrong. Who say thank you without following it with but next time. Who seem genuinely happy just to share time with me. It's not that they're perfect. It's that they're capable of contentment. That realization healed something deep in me. I'm not inherently unsatisfactory. I was just with someone who needed dissatisfaction to feel in control. I don't hate her. I don't even wish her misery. From what mutual friends say, she's dating someone new and, predictably, already compiling lists of his shortcomings. The pattern continues, just with a different target. That's sad, but it's no longer my burden to carry. I hope someday she confronts why happiness feels threatening to her, why peace feels like settling. Maybe therapy will help, maybe not. Either way, her journey isn't mine anymore. What I feel most now is gratitude. For the clarity that came from hitting bottom, for the strength I found when I finally stopped trying to earn love that was never freely given, for the life I'm building that's based on appreciation rather than improvement. I lost a marriage, but I found myself. And myself, this quieter, stronger, more authentic version, turned out to be someone worth keeping. Satisfaction, I've learned, isn't about being perfect. It's about being with someone who chooses to see your wholeness instead of your gaps. I spent years trying to fill gaps that were never meant to be filled. Now I'm whole on my own, and any future partner will add to that wholeness rather than demand I rebuild myself to fit their vision. That feels like real satisfaction, the kind that doesn't come from fixing everything wrong, but from finally recognizing nothing was wrong with me in the first place.